Welcome to the October 4th, 2021, 6 p.m. meeting of the Johnston County Board of Commissioners. I now call the meeting to order. I have an announcement to make. The board utilized written ballots for the Moccasin Creek Service District Board position representing the rural area of the district this morning. The results have been tallied. Mr. Richard D. Browswell was appointed. Mr. Browswell needs a waiver in the length of service policy, and I need a motion.
So move we grant Mr. Richard Braswell a waiver in the length of service policy for the Moccasin Creek Service District Board.
Second.
We've got a motion, we got a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Braswell. Next, I would like to, as we typically do, our elected officials in the audience. We've got Chairman of the School Board, Mr. Sutton. We've got Mr. Johnston, Mr. Wooten, Mr. Andrews, and Vice Chair Ms. Sessoms. Thank y'all for being here. We also have Smithfield Town Council, Mr. Lee. Thank you. If I missed anybody, please let me know. Next on the agenda is approval and discussion of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda with these changes. Number one, case 21-15 needs to be removed from the agenda for tonight. In addition, I'd like to take item number 4, Johnston County Public School funding, and move that up to agenda item number 2.
Is that a motion?
I'll make that as a motion.
A second.
We got a motion, we got a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now before public comment, we're going to address item 4, which I do believe is Johnston County Public School funding.
Mr. Chairman, when we adopted our budget, we withheld certain funds from the school board because we believe that teaching CRT was harmful to our children and to our country. I'm proud to announce tonight, because of the effort of members of the school board, Mr. Braswell, Mr. Wood, Mr. Harris, that the school board has adopted Policy Code 5100. I've studied Policy Code 5100 and have compared that with GS 324, which our General Assembly passed, and have determined that they are both compatible, and I think have met the objectives that we intended for our students and for the good of our country. And based upon that, I want to make a motion that we fund the school board for the amount of money, I don't know the exact amount that we withheld, and that we let that go.
Full funding request.
Full funding.
I second that motion. I think it's 7.5 additional. Commissioner? 7.9. Okay,
All right, we got a motion, we got a second. Is there any discussion with this board? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. School will be funded this year. Now, let me back up to next on the agenda is public comment, and I'll try not to screw this up, but public comment is 3 minutes for anybody to address this board on an item that is not on the agenda. And from what I understand, that typically means that if we've got a public hearing like we are going to have tonight on different zoning cases, that you don't address that issue at public comment, you'll have a chance to address it when that situation comes up on the agenda. Now, that being said, when we have items on the agenda that are not open for a public hearing later in the meeting, then naturally we want to hear from the citizens, as if with this school funding. Now, this board might be accused of a lot of things, but silencing the public is not one of them. We appreciate hearing from our public, and we'll continue to have public comment time. Now, we're starting public comment, and we're going to start with one that has requested to begin with is 4-H student Ms. Carol Worth would like to share information about her leadership role in 4-H. Thank the board for adopting the proclamation this morning.
everyone. Thank you for allowing me to come speak today.
You're more than welcome to take your mask off or keep it on, whatever one's comfortable for you.
Thank you. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for letting me come speak today. My name is Kira Worth, and I'm a 4-H'er from Johnston County. I'm the Johnston County Council President, and I'm also currently serving as the reporter for the Southeast District. And I know that 4-H is an amazing program that has helped so many kids develop skills they need, such as leadership and community service. And with this week being National 4-H Week, it provides us a great opportunity to really communicate with others and get to share our 4-H experiences and hopefully bring in new youth. So I just wanted to thank you all for allowing us to adopt this week as National 4-H Week and provide us with this opportunity.
Well, for one, and this board thanks you for coming. Thanks you for what you do with 4-H and taking the time to come and recognize the proclamation we had this morning. Is there any questions or comments for her?
Just congratulate you on your leadership positions.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
What do you show? What animals do you show?
I show horses.
Well, good.
Awesome.
That could be a job. Well, thank you.
Thank you for
If you
coming.
don't have anything else to add, we appreciate you coming.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, next, we're still in public comment period. If anybody wants to address, keep in mind, we try to limit to 3 minutes. This board, please take the podium.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the commissioners, thank you. Thank you for funding our school system. And I believe this is the first time in history, or many, many years, that the school system has been fully funded on a capital outlay as well as our general budget. So our students and our staff, thank you for what you do. We appreciate you all giving us this opportunity to work on this and come back and provide something to you that we can all work with moving forward. And I just, again, thank you very much for doing that tonight. And at this time, if anybody from our policy review committee that worked on this policy, I would like to ask them if they would like to say anything to you.
Okay, Mr. Sutton.
Before they do, I wonder if I could address Mr. Sutton
You can.
briefly. When I was in 7th grade here in Johnston County, our teacher read to us every day after lunch. She read Uncle Tom's Cabin, the whole book. And it was a profound effect on us. We understood the history of what had gone on and the terrible aspects of it. And I think everybody understood how wrong and how difficult and bad it was. I hope we're teaching our kids now, today, the same things. I just hope we're not teaching, I think that was the reason for this whole discussion. We're not teaching them that my grandson is responsible for those actions. And that's really the crux of it. So I hope we teach the history as it happened, bad and good.
Absolutely, Mr.
Thank
Godwin.
I'm going to come from a different angle, Mr. Sutton. Me and you, along with Dr. Bracy, your finance team, Mr. Hester and his finance team, worked very hard on this budget this year. And as you noted, we have fully funded capital and current expense. Now, don't let us down.
Yes, sir. Dr. Bracy has got a great plan, as you all know from our retreat we had together. And we have full faith that Dr. Bracy and his leadership team can get us to the goals that he has set out for Johnston County. And that is something that the entire board is in favor of, and we'll be moving in that direction to make sure Johnston County's back where it's supposed to be in the top 10.
As you very well know, the citizens are paying for it.
Yes, sir. They will, and they're going to see some different results.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I've heard some good news about some grades too, and I look forward to hearing more about that.
Absolutely, Mr. Wood. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman Stewart. Briefly want to go over the facets that make up this $7.9 million policy. And it's all rooted in social responsibility, empathy, conflict resolution, human relations, compliance with laws, breaking the cycle of poverty, and providing a balance and fairness when you discuss political and socio topics. Now, when we look at social responsibility and empathy, we want to teach our students about generativity, intolerance of ineffective humanity, empathy again, civil aspiration, and mutuality. Now, those terms are easily found online. I will not waste your time in defining those if you're unfamiliar. However, when we move forward in discussing topics that could be of a potential divisive nature, because politics do divide, but we want to show an understanding and appreciation for all people, Whenever we look at human relations, we're going to look at building trust. Trust with our government, trust with each other, and trust with people who may be different than us. When we look at this trust, it's broken up into 5 dimensions, which is consistency, competency, loyalty, integrity, and openness to change. Now, I could break those down, but those things are 5 major dimensions in building trust, which is what is needed in times such as these. Now, when we talk about compliance with laws, we do not want to promote any ideology or behavior that puts our children in some type of danger. No children should be encouraged to commit any crimes that are defined as crimes in the name of activism. Also, we want to look at breaking the cycle of poverty. When you look at the cycle of poverty, that is the true monster in the room. You know, racism destroys communities. But if you're unable to provide for yourself, racism takes a back seat to physiological needs. And we also want to provide that balance and fairness. All the while, we want to uphold, defend, and promote the foundational documents that have made this country what it is. This policy was initially introduced by me. No matter where it started, it's about where it ended. Whenever you had a committee of people come together, now I'm not one to tout diversity because skin color is skin color, but when you have a diverse group of people get together and comb through something with input, that's when you get the best product. And I do appreciate those who are principals, assistant principals, law enforcement officers, and teachers who came together to come up with this stellar product. And I couldn't have done this by myself. I know that there is the perception out there that this is my policy, and I've certainly portrayed it as that in some in the beginning. But it has taken legs of its own. It's been reviewed by Ms. Sessoms and Ms. Andrews and Mr. Byrd, who isn't here. There was a lot of work put into this with a lot of input from those board members. And no matter where anyone started, I think everyone is in support of it now. So I do want to appreciate it. It's not more, you know, people say CRT policy, critical race theory. Theories belong in higher learning. We got to get these kids to a place where they understand these facets of trust, social responsibility, empathy, kindness, and complying with laws. Now, I know people feel certain types of way about this, and I'm not going to begrudge anyone for that. But this group came together in their mind doing what's right for kids. And we can talk about House bills, we can talk about Senate bills, but we're out here trying to do what we think is best for kids. So I do appreciate your time. This money is going to go to help some of our lowest paid employees, and that's where it needs to go. So we appreciate you.
Thank you. And speaking of money, I do want to clarify several things. At the budget time, we did full capital expense. Current expense, operating expense, whatever you want to call it, it's just been clarified, $79.9 million. So just for the people at home and for the record, that is what we did tonight. And I would like to make another comment. Mr. Carroll is out of town. He did want to be here to support the school system. And Mr. Byrd, I guess, had another obligation. But thank y'all for being here. And is there anyone else that would like to speak? Any questions for Mr. Johnston? Any comments?
Doubt it.
Thank you.
Now on to the grades.
Yes, sir. And this would, I'm going to tell you, I got to give credit where credit is due. When I felt like this was going to fall apart, Mr. Wood stepped up, organized a meeting, and then I felt really good about where we were going with this. So thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Anyone else would like to address, still public comment period? And would anybody like to speak to this board?
Hey guys, what's happening? Things changed a little bit from where I was going to start at, but
Even though we know you, name and address for the
Dale
record.
Land, 7234 Cornwallis Road, Garner.
Thank you.
Things are a little different than they were when I was going to start this, but as it turns out, I can just kind of proceed with what I got here. I am here to thank all of you that worked on this anti-CRT policy. That will likely get voted on shortly, that's already been voted on. So thank you for that. Thank you for getting it across the finish line.
No, that came in at the last minute, but
I understand. That's
this
okay.
board is subject to do what
it's
this
done,
subject board to do what they vote to do. So
it's done, and I'm glad to see that it's done. From the beginning, where Commissioner Smith brought it into light and kind of picked up some of the things that we had been working with the school board for some period of time on. that kind of gave it legs and gave us an opportunity to get some attention on it, and I thank Commissioner Smith for that. The whole thing that we're trying to get done with this, as Commissioner Godwin mentioned, is just teach regular history, regular math, teach the kids to read. That's what we want them to do. We want the kids to be successful again, and Dr. Bracey has promised that he's going to make them successful again. So I think we have to give him that opportunity. I'd like to thank Ron Johnston for crafting this originally and working with the policy committee to get it to the point that it is now. I'd like to thank Dr. Bracey for his forward thinking and supporting the process, having the courage and forward thinking to push this forward when a lot of people were saying no on his own school board. This was all brought to Chairman Sutton early in June, and he didn't seem to be able to come up with a policy that would work. So thanks to all the commissioners that worked on it. I know Mr. Harris, Mr. Braswell, Mr. Wood. There was a lot of you that were involved, probably all of you at some point in time or another, just like all of the board members on the policy committee were involved. So I want to thank all of you that worked on it. I want to thank everybody that made it get done. Thank you for doing the right thing for the county, but there is a couple things that I want to address. I've heard many of you say that you don't want to get into the business of withholding funds to achieve goals. But I will ask that you consider the fact that even though the school board is an elected board, you guys are the county commissioners. Our money's paid to you guys. This wouldn't have happened if you hadn't been holding $7.9 million. This flat out wouldn't have happened. They wouldn't even have entertained the idea. And there's some times when other forms of government have to hold their counterparts accountable. And you guys did your job as far as this county is concerned, and you held your counterparts at the school board accountable for the money that you were handing over that we pay as taxpayers. And so we thank you for that as a county. I do hope that you'll keep that in your toolbox. Hope we never have to use it again. But always keep that in your toolbox and understand that you can use it. With that said, I just want to thank all of you again for standing up for kids, standing up for the county, and getting this done. Thank you for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you. Still public comment time. Has anybody got anything? The way we like to do public comment is not be repetitive. We'd like to hear things different, or a different subject for that matter.
Hi, I'm Angelique Leggett. Do you mind if I approach the bench and hand each one
No,
of you
ma'am.
this?
If you would just you state your name, your address for the
Angelique
record.
Leggett, 206 West Wilson Street, Smithville, North Carolina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I come from the old school. There's a problem, be part of the solution, and a part of the problem.
Thank you.
So I understand
Thank you, ma'am.
everyone's concerned with everyone with CRT. I just want
Thank
to
you.
give you some other options. Can you put this one there? Some other options. Don't want to harp on it. You guys did what you did. But I also want you to consider there are some books out there like this that won't make people feel some sort of way. It's not saying that all white people are bad. It's not saying that all black people are victims. It's just the facts. And I think it's important that we show and tell all of our children that. Excuse me. I have 4 children in the Johnston County Public School, and my 12-year-old loves the school. So whatever they're doing, I appreciate it. I bought a home here. I expect to be here, and I expect to be comfortable. So I would like to work with all of you because my kids are probably going to stay here too, but it is uncomfortable. And it's uncomfortable to think that people throw this CRT definition out there, and then all of a sudden it's even a wider division. Coming from my job, I'm law enforcement, federal. I'm not really accustomed to all of that. So we have a long way to go in Johnston. I would love to be a part of it. I'd love to see it moving forward. And I'd love for all this animosity, hostility, whatever's going on here to get going, because I don't want my kids raised in this. I did want to read one thing. I was going through some bills and things like this, and it said, whereas on May 29, 2020, the United States Congress enacted into law the Never Again Education Act, recognizing the importance of institutionalizing education about the events of the Holocaust, and providing that Holocaust education provides a context in which to learn about the danger of what can happen when hate goes unchallenged, and there is indifference in the face of oppression of others. Learning how and why the Holocaust happened is an important component of the education of the citizens of the United States. The Holocaust didn't happen in America. Slavery happened. Brutality, lynching, really bad things, not only to blacks. This book talks about the Indians, it talks about the Hispanics, it talks about everything. And that's what we need to do. We need to give everybody the full picture and not try to influence them with anything. I'm not very happy with the holding hostage of funds, because I think that there was a huge misunderstanding and there should have been more communication. But I'm here now, and I thank you for releasing those funds because it's going to help my kids, so I'm selfish on that end. But overall, I just hope that we can really not get to that point of having to hold people hostage to get things done. We're all grown. We're all successful in our own way. We can really do this, and we can really make this county, Johnston County, great. All right? So that's all I want to say. Not much. Have a good one. Nice meeting you all, Mr. Fred, Smith. It's been a pleasure meeting you. Mr. Harris, Mr. Braswell, congratulations. Mr. Stewart, Mr. Wood, Mr. Lauder. Mr.
Young lady.
Thank you.
Yes.
Would you give me a call sometimes?
Oh,
You want to talk about solutions?
oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. I know.
Thank you, ma'am.
My pleasure.
Thanks for your comments.
We're still in public comment period. Would anybody like to address this board on an item?
My name is Matt Burns. I'm 96 Look Drive in Garner. And I will not disappoint you. It's a completely different subject, and it's a long-term proposal that I want to put in front of you to think for next year and the next many years to come. Getting around in Johnston County is usually with a car, but a lot of recreational areas and a lot of people walk and ride bicycles, but it's very difficult around here. We got this news trail that eventually gets us very far, but not really within Johnston County. So my suggestion is that you put into your consideration for future budgets to, whenever you work on roads, to have walking paths or bicycle trails a long way, put some plan together where you can interconnect different areas of the county, you know, not just the News River, but maybe going out in all kinds of other areas. And I think there is a big need because a lot of people walk around, and some of the roads are really narrow, it's dangerous, and every couple of weeks someone dies. Just yesterday, someone died on 70, was it yesterday or the day before, just recently. And by the time, I've been living in Johnston County for a long time now, but the first couple of weeks I moved here, there were 2 people dying just walking across the street. Not across, along the street. A lot of people do that, and they're very, very narrow. So basically just have maybe someone who study a plan to create some recreational ability, and maybe can be also used for like a shorter terms commute. Now, I'm not suggesting something that I see in Raleigh. They go overboard. They put, you know, they have a nice 4-lane road that is, for main traffic, what they do is they cut 2 lanes and put a bicycle path next to it, and then back up traffic. You know, I think cars and bicycles and walkers should be able to coexist. You know, you don't have to create a space for one on the expense of another. So it should be something that is just going forward planned to do something new, and really that's all that I had.
Thank you. Mr. Law?
If I could address Mr. Burns' comments. We had I guess a ceremony, not really a ceremony, an opportunity to, an event to discuss the exact thing you're talking about. We had East Coast Greenway. They're putting up mile markers along that trail. It goes from Maine to Key West, and we're fortunate that it goes through Johnston County. We also have the Mountain Sea Trail, which comes through that. We have a $150,000 grant to look at connecting from Clayton to Smithfield. So I think your vision is underway. Hopefully that won't take a lot of time, but we also have opportunities through our planning organizations to look at adding these bicycle facilities and lanes to our roads as we construct them. So I think your vision is a shared vision. It may take a little bit of time to get there, but we're headed down that path, so
And
to
I see
speak.
it's a long term, but one thing could be, when you plan on 42 widening, that's, the perpendicular from your mountain to sea trail, but have something, you spend a lot of effort creating a 42 from all the way 40 probably to I don't know where, but to have a little bit of extra space and allow people to go that way, that also allows people from other areas maybe even to access that mountain to sea trail without having to use a car to get there.
And I think you'll see those opportunities as we, again, we're in the infancy of the
I mean,
of
and
our
there are
program.
many small things. I mention that sometimes to the city in Clayton. They have a nursing home just across the creek from a shopping center. But there is a very narrow bridge. The people that live there in the nursing home, I don't know any of them, but I don't think all of them are incapable of walking, but they're completely isolated. Would have, if they had thought a little bit ahead and had created a small bridge so people from there could just walk to the shopping center and have a much better life, So things like that, small stuff, doesn't have to be expensive.
Well, we appreciate you approaching the board, and I don't know if Mr. Lawler mentioned it, but for your information, and we can get staff to get you, we do have Adrian O'Neill that is our Parks and Rec coordinator, and so he would be happy to take your phone call and discuss some of your ideas with him also.
Okay,
Not, we don't appreciate them, but we're glad to hear them.
Most of the things you talked about, I'm a cyclist myself. Most of those really are come under DOT. We don't do anything with roads, but we do have some influence. I serve on the Upper Coastal Plain RPO, what he was talking about, planning organizations like Campo that he serves on. So we'll put in whatever words we can and try to get money designated for these types of activities. It's a good point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're still in public comment. Do we have anybody else that would like to address this board?
Good evening, Board of Commissioners. My name is Erica Hall. I live at 129 Costello Way, Clayton. I have a 6th grader and a 3rd grader in the public school system and a 3-year-old who will be a student in a few years. Unfortunately, somewhere along the way, misinformation has been coding this county consistently about the subject of CRT. I'm here today to tell you that CRT, or critical race theory, is not taught in the Johnston County public school system. CRT is always conducted at the undergraduate and graduate levels to examine the role of racism in the modern era. This catch-all term is like fodder for a political debate, nothing more and nothing less. That is how CRT is being used in this county right now. Our teachers should be able to work with the educational stakeholders of this county to consider what is being taught in the classroom and what isn't. The community, parents, lawmakers, and verifiable researchers can chime in afterward. It is public knowledge that local conservative activist messages helped influence the policy you all requested to be written, and it clearly reflects only their beliefs. They are the loud minority and not the majority of your constituents. These said citizens did not earn any degree or take humanities, social sciences, or cultural anthropology courses. I ask the members of this board and the citizens of Johnston County that are opposed to the ugly facts about American history, why are you so afraid of teaching our children the truth? These children are our future. Do you not think we should instill the essence of transparency about the tragic past of our African American, Hispanic, Asian, Indigenous brothers and sisters? I know some of you are not ready for this conversation yet, and maybe you never will be. The time is here, and that cannot be stopped. It is time to swallow your willful ignorance and be the leading and honest example for the children. We can recognize that history can oftentimes be described as uncomfortable and upsetting. Our educators should not be punished for teaching facts and difficult truths. I have confidence in our excellent teachers and the talent we possess in this county. I have complete faith that they would teach authentic American history in the classroom appropriately for each age group and grade. Our children of this county deserve honesty and not whitewashed history that makes white people more comfortable and covers up the massacres and injustices of the past. I don't live in a fantasy world where I teach my children that everything has been fine in the past or that they will continue to be fine. I'm not going to lie outright and tell them that the United States of America has always been just and benevolent. If I do that, I will set them up for failure. I implore you to remove yourself from your shoes, realize you all are privileged, and ensure our children can learn about this country's incredible and heartbreaking past. Not only are all of you single-handedly responsible for requiring a baseless policy to be in place, but you are also responsible for making our teachers' jobs more difficult to protect the loud minorities' feelings. You now are forcing blindfolds and earmuffs on our children who will not learn true American history.
Thank you. We're still in the public comment portion. Does anybody else would like to address this board on something that's not on the agenda?
Chairman Stewart, how you doing?
Joe, how are you?
Good. Joe Preston, 202 Carissa Drive, Smithfield. Be very quick. I just want to thank you guys for checks and balances. That's a system of our government. I personally, I'm happy with the language that was put in to the policy 5100 or the code 5100. I think it could have been a little bit stronger, but it's definitely in the right direction. I don't think there's anything wrong with what you guys did. I keep hearing the term withheld. I don't think you withheld anything. I believe you had an agreement with another organization for them to provide you with some sort of policy, and you held them accountable for that. So I don't think that's being withheld. I think language is important on how things are described. So I think you guys did a great job. You're doing what the citizens are asking you to do. And once again, I just wanted to thank you for what I believe is doing the right thing and checks and balances. We are a republic. That's it. Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
We are still in public comment period of the meeting. Anyone else? Going once? We got it on one. Miss April, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Even though we know you. Name and
Yes, you
address
do.
for the record.
That's fine. My name is April Lee. I live at 182 Coaster Court, Anger, but it's in Johnston County. So I'm just here. You guys have heard from me before. I'm going to express my disappointment in this policy and the leverage that you used, where Mr. Preston said that you weren't withholding. I was at the June meeting where Mr. Smith brought up the policy, and it in fact is withholding. That's exactly what it was. It was withholding funds in order to get a policy against CRT or divisive teaching or whatever you want to call it, because CRT is not mentioned in the policy. But it was in fact withholding of funds, and in my opinion it's extortion. I've said that before too, loudly and often, and I continue to say it, and I will continue to say it. I hope that you never employ this policy again, because the two boards are separate from each other and should be separate from each other. And while I believe in accountability, I do not support any sort of quid pro quo, which is what this also falls under. In order for you to get this, then you must do that. And it's wrong. It may not be legally wrong, we're looking into that, but it is ethically wrong. And I think all of you on this board know that. There were some of you who expressed your concerns back in June. I wish you had stuck to your guns and not caved. And it is very sad that although some people are represented as far as being satisfied with this, I do not believe that it actually is something that most of the people here in Johnston County support. And I don't think there's any way for you to know that. I know that there are certain groups who have inundated you with emails about this policy, and there are people you will never hear from. And I think those people you never hear from, because often they feel like they are the folks that even if you heard from them, it wouldn't change your mind anyway. I think there's a lot of folks who are upset about this policy, and it's just because we're trying to limit what we teach, and that's sad. And it benefits one group, and it does not benefit another. And again, I hope you never employ this policy again. I hope that this tactic, this method, is never used again. It was not how our local government was supposed to be done. And it's a disappointment. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're still in public comment. Is anybody else going once, She got it on one, too.
I didn't plan on speaking today. Michelle Antoine, 174 Plaza Duluth, Clayton. I've emailed all of you. And the policy against CRT isn't about racism at all. We want the full history of America told to students. They need to know the atrocious past, but they also need to know the huge benefit America has served the world as the greatest country on God's green earth. These are American public schools. We need to instill into our students the greatness of America, not forgetting the horrible history that goes along with it. But again, this isn't about racism. This is about oppressor and oppressed. Just like Marx taught us with class, we're doing it with race. There is a Jewish physician that wrote a piece, and it was really wonderfully done. His name was Howard Sachs, and this is what he wrote. It takes gritty, hard, liberal American, adult sweat and tears, risk and initiative, maturity and self-denial to create a fruitful country with happy citizens. And a big part of that adult world is the necessity of keeping the government small so it doesn't come in the guise of mom and dad promising us stuff, but instead delivering the iron fist of slavery. It takes the adult realization that nothing is free. Everything takes expense and hard work. It takes, in summary, the adult world of free market capitalism, not the child world of socialism, to get us those lives of freedom and autonomy, those iPhones, Boeing 737s to fly us cheaply all over the world, clean water from our sinks, MRI scanners just down the road, and blueberries in winter at Whole Foods. All this disappears or becomes available only to the politicians who lord it over us if the child is unleashed and told to run the place with socialism. I want to thank you all for helping the school board facilitate the passage of this policy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are still in public comment phase of this meeting. Anybody else would like to address this board? We need to we want to give everybody a chance to speak, as we said earlier, but we're starting to get a little bit repetitive.
Yeah. Hopefully I'll be the last repetitive person.
You're more than welcome to speak, sir.
Thank you. So I just want to let you all know that you should be ashamed. Sorry, I apologize. Allen Hall, 129 Costello Way, Clayton. You should be ashamed that you forced our Board of Education to write a policy stating that CRT is not being taught in our schools when it already wasn't and still is not being taught in our schools. Verbiage within Policy 5100 is straight from our local racist right-wing Republicans and is incredibly troubling. If you wanted a policy to reduce funds, the policy should have consisted of one sentence. That sentence being, CRT is not being taught in Johnston County Public Schools. End of the policy. Republicans are using the debate about critical race theory as an excuse to rewrite American history, just as United Daughters of the Confederacy did after the end of the Civil War. We are still fighting in 2021 over whose narrative of history will be taught. The true atrocities white people have perpetrated all over the world, or a sanitized, whitewashed version of history that makes little white kids feel better about themselves. The latest outrage of conservative cancel culture isn't about critical race theory at all. CRT is an academic construct taught in law schools and graduate programs. Simply put, this is about white fragility. This is about old white people who see the racism embedded into our education, legal, credit, and housing systems being eroded. Racism is not merely the product of individual bias or prejudice, as this policy tries to indicate. What is wrong with teaching our children the truth behind the 500 years of lies? Why are people afraid of their children learning our real and true American history? Why would you punish a teacher that correctly teaches that not all our country's white forefathers were moral and just men? The answer is that collectively and culturally, white people are still racist. That is why there are so many people adamant about protecting the lie. It is up to us, all of us, our schools included, to teach our children better, So maybe within their lifetimes, we could overcome the racial disparities still prevalent in our society. There's one line that I just wanted to address the board, if you want to answer, you don't have to. Just wanted to kind of get your definition and what it means to you. That was all people who contributed to American society will be recognized and presented as reformists, innovators, and heroes to our culture. What does that mean to you as a white male? Anybody care to answer that?
I'm sure that they have the question noted. It'll be in the minutes, and if someone would like to respond to you through email or phone conversation,
Sure.
I'm sure they'd be glad to give you a definition.
Look forward to it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And thank you for your comments. Okay, I'm going to choose at this point to eliminate any more conversation as it pertains to CRT, school funding, or anything as it does with public comment. I think we've been fair to hear both sides tonight. We give everybody an ample amount of time to speak on this matter. And we do have other meetings. To be fair to the people that have other items on the agenda, it's time for us to move on with the meeting. We do have a meeting every 2 weeks, and we do have a public comment period at all of our meetings. So if anybody has anything other than CRT, school funding, or anything to address this board on, I'm going to close out the public hearing. Public comment. Okay, public comment is closed. Any emails, Madam Clerk? Okay, we are definitely entering into a new way of a legislative process on how we handle rezoning cases. So if the public will please bear with us, we will make mistakes, but we will learn and learn by our mistakes. I'm going to open the public hearing rezoning for case 2106. And I guess I call on Braston. I still think that's part of our routine, right?
Yes, sir, you are correct. So, good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Since you did mention making mistakes, I'm going to go ahead and admit to one. We failed to include in your packets, and this is solely on our department, not on the clerk's part. It's solely our fault. We failed to include in case 2106 and 2109 the site plan. We do have those available for you. They will be on the dock on the dock camera a little bit later as we proceed. So just wanted to make sure that, and thank you, Mr. Lauder, Commissioner Lauder, for bringing that to my attention earlier. So the first item on or the first hearing this evening is with regard to case 21-06. This is a petition to rezone 6.17 acres located at 9939 NC Highway 210 and 4065 Lassiter Road in Elevation Township from agriculture residential to general business conditional zoning district. Owner is, I apologize, you see who the owner is. I do not want to butcher the name, but it's Paganello and Nunziato Family LLC. Applicant John Nunziato. So the conditional district request is for outside storage and storage buildings, being your mini storages. Services in this area are provided by 5210 Fire District and Rescue. Existing surrounding land uses, there are a myriad of surrounding land uses to be agriculture and residential. There is an adjoining residential development just to the west, bounding the west of the property. There are also various general business and conditional or community business zoning districts, and these are for such uses as storage facility, gas convenience store, Dollar General, retail center, and a local business office. Traffic counts on NC 210 is 8,500 vehicles per day, and this is a 2019 count, and for Lassiter Road it's 2,900 vehicles per day, and also a 2019 count. NC 210 does appear on the CTP, or Comprehensive Transportation Plan, as a boulevard needing improvement. The area is designated as a secondary growth area per our Comprehensive Land Use Plan. Staff does recommend approval, and at this time, if we could have the site plan up on DotCam, if that's possible, just to give you an idea of the site layout proposed by the applicant. And if you'll notice on page 7 of your agenda, you will see the proposed conditions to the use provided by the applicant.
Okay. Any questions for Braston?
One, on condition number 9, 1 acre being disturbed. Define disturbed.
So it's essentially any area where the vegetation and the earth is moved. And this is a requirement as part of our erosion and sedimentation control and public utilities. That would be determined at such time that a full set of design drawings are submitted for review. As with this process and any other process where there's physical development, we do require that there's a full set of design drawings submitted and reviewed by our technical review committee consisting of our department, public utilities, building inspections, environmental health where required, and NCDOT.
Mr. Newton, could you, I want to say we've seen this case just a few months back. Do you happen to remember why it was turned down?
So I think the previous request was for a general use district zoning, which is that general business, meaning that any use allowed for our use table, the county's use table, in that general business district would be allowed on the property. And I think there was some hesitancy on the part of both. I know it was mentioned by planning board and this body as well, in allowing for that, just because it is the most expansive of our commercial zoning districts.
I knew some local citizens that had expressed some concern about that, but they're okay with this now.
Please educate me on where this is. What's the wording on it being a storage facility and that only?
So that should be in the conditions.
That's a condition?
Yes, it should be in the conditions.
I think number 2.
Restricted to
Outdoor storage on 1, proposed land
Yes,
use
sir.
restricted to that.
Thank you.
Ms. Wood?
Any more questions for Braston? If not, we'll hear from the applicant regarding the request and the proposed conditions. I think staff will put the conditions on the screen at this time, and I'm sure the people at home will be able to see what we're seeing.
Good evening. John Nunziato, 135 Brookstone Way, Angel. The reason that we were here before you is because I filled out the application and I didn't put special use. And that would have opened it up if we wanted to put a cement plant or an asphalt plant, and that's why you gentlemen were hesitant.
I remember that meeting at the Ag Center, and I could tell that you were not clear on what we were doing.
Yeah.
And I knew
Well,
when you found out exactly what the process was that we'd see you
Through
again.
COVID, to get someone to try to come and work with you is really tough right now.
Right.
And who knows how long it'll take you even to get the materials to do it.
Exactly.
But we've been doing business up at McGee's Crossroads, the same thing, for 20 years. I have multiple businesses in Johnston County. The zoning and the planning made some recommendations as far as fence and some lighting, and we were fine with that.
Well, that was going to be my next question, but if you don't mind, stay at the podium. Is there any questions from the commissioners, comments?
You've got a storage facility somewhere else. How long have you had that?
20 years.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no more questions for you, I might call you back up. But,
okay. Thank you.
Once again, I'm getting used to new style of this process. Okay, is there anybody here in the public that would like to speak towards case 2106 or against it? Okay, if not, I'm going to close the public discussion portion of the hearing and call on Braston to summarize and present planning board's recommendation.
Yes, sir. With respect to conditional zoning case 21-06, planning board does recommend approval and provides for your consideration a statement of consistency with a list of attached conditions along with that statement. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
And if there's no question for Braston, I need to make sure that this board understands the conditions and are considerate of the conditions. If so,
I did have a question,
Okay.
so I'll make sure I got the right numbers, it's 2106. So I see 6.17 acres, and I see 2 lots, and my quick math doesn't add up to 6.17 acres, but are we talking about those 2 lots? Showing, I see lot 1 is 1.53, and lot 2 is 4.67.
This is just the 6.17 acres.
I don't see a 6.17. I see a 4.67 and a 1.53.
So the math just isn't working out. So that's our fault.
But it is those 2 lots. I just want to make sure.
Yes, it's a 6+ acre tract.
Okay, and so what we're
It's
looking
an
at then is.
L-shaped tract that fronts both on Lasseter
Okay.
Road all the way back out.
And so what's shown on ours is basically lot 2 is planned for development at this point.
Yes, sir.
So in the middle of this process, what happens with lot 1? Can it extend the operations on there? Is that another
Provided
condition?
it adheres to these conditions.
Okay.
What would we do without the engineer?
Probably so.
Okay, once again, is this board good with consideration of these conditions? Okay, I would ask the applicant to please step back up. Sir, we agree with these conditions. We understand you agree with these conditions. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to close the public hearing. Planning board recommends approval. If the commissioners concur, we need a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt the statement of consistency resolution as presented in the agenda packet for case 2106 and approve the rezoning request with the conditions as discussed here.
Second.
We've got a motion, we got a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations. Our first one. Okay, next is case 2109. I'm going to open the conditional zoning district hearing and call on Braston. I hope we get through this one the same way.
Good job.
Yes, sir. Make every effort. So, conditional zoning case 21-09 involves a petition to rezone a 3.54 acre tract located in the 500 block of Church Road in Pleasant Grove Township from agricultural residential to general business conditional district. The owner is N. Morris Rowland and the applicant is Adams and Hodge Engineering. The conditional district request is for outdoor storage for boats, RVs, travel trailers, and the like. Utilities and services provided by 5210 Fire District and Rescue. Existing land uses, surrounding land uses are agriculture and residential in purpose, for residential purposes. And also in that general vicinity is a general business special use district, which is an auto sales lot and a storage facility. In addition, a community business zoning, and this is a restaurant. Traffic on Highway NC 50 is 8,900 vehicles per day, and that's 2019 count. And there is no traffic count for Church Road. NC 50 does appear on our comprehensive transportation plan as a boulevard aiding improvement. This property is located in a primary growth area as noted in our county's comprehensive land use plan. Staff does recommend approval of the request, and we'll provide this is a sketch of the site plan. I think I have another here. We'll send. So this property does have frontage on both NC 50 and Church Road, and you can see from the site plan they have done a tremendous amount of work to ensure that not only is meeting.
Excuse me, Braston, everybody get a site plan that needed one? There's, I think
they're floating around.
I think the gentleman's got some more if needed.
Okay. There's a couple here, Braston. Y'all got one?
I've already looked at it and passed it down.
We're good, we're good.
Yeah. Got 2.
As you can see, they've they've established an entry all on Church Road as opposed to access on NC 50, which we discussed during the pre-application meeting and thought this was prudent, considering the traffic counts on NC 50. Be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Any questions for Braxton?
Chairman, on the actual site where the crush and run, the compacted ABC, what other structures are there? Anything? Or is it just a pad? I mean,
I assume that's just a pad.
Okay.
This is definitely consistent with that area up there. I mean, I think there's quite a few of what these requests, and obviously the one we just heard.
So as Mr. Nunziato mentioned earlier, he does operate a storage facility nearby, actually at the crossroads.
So it's nothing new for the area.
No,
and it's definitely a need for
there's
it.
There's actually another on Church Road as well, very near this. As everyone is aware, the area is seeing a tremendous amount of growth, and covenants for neighborhoods more often than not does limit your ability to store larger vehicles and utility type vehicles on those lots within those developments.
The only condition that even caught my attention is number 4. Is I know the last one we just approved before had a 10 p.m. stop time. Just curious as to how that may impact the neighbors. If somebody's over at 2:30 in the morning getting their motor home cranked up and warmed up and pulling it out on the road with the lights on, is that something that the board sees?
Was that addressed at planning board?
It was discussed, and I think it was passed. It was passed when it was approved by the planning board as it is. However, I would.
So it might not be as dense residential around there, maybe possibly the other one.
It's currently not. Now, there is residential developed in the area, but it is currently not a dense development, as we have seen in other developments nearby, such as Daniel Farm over on 210. But the applicant may be able to address that.
Any more questions for Braxton? If not, we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening. I'm Donnie Adams with Adams and Hodge Engineering, 314 East Main Street in Clayton, North Carolina. Thank you for letting me come before you tonight and talk about this project. Without repeating what Braxton has to say, I think I can just jump into answering a couple of questions that you guys mentioned. Mr. Godwin, you mentioned, you asked about the stone base for the parking, but you also asked about structures. Were you concerned if there were going to be buildings out there in addition?
Yeah, is it a shelter or anything like that?
Okay, at this time, there's not a proposal, it's not proposed to be constructed, but condition number 6, we've put in there the option to add a 3-sided, like a sheltered area at some point in the future if the need arises. And had a question, Mr. Wood, about the hours. And again, as Braxton said, we talked about it at the planning board level. My understanding is that that's a pretty common time frame for these units to be. 24 hours. I realized the previous guy, he mentioned at the planning board meeting that based on his experience, he preferred to limit that time over his years. There's another, as Braxton mentioned, there's another outdoor storage across the street, and I am not sure, Braxton, do you know the hours of operation? I assume it to be consistent with what we're asking.
Would you be up for the hours ending at 10 p.m.?
Have to defer to the owner. The owner is here tonight.
Commissioners, good evening. My name is Chris Rowland, 3143 Constant Circle in Raleigh. I am the current owner. To start with, Mr. Wood, I would like to move forward with the proposed hours as 24. Of course, this is a trial and error for me. I don't have multiple storage facilities I operate and own. This would be the first. It was kind of a thought of my father's when he was alive. Kind of picked it up and moving it forward or trying to. If I see the need or the lack of presence during those times, I plan to track it very closely during the first 12 to 18 months of operation. If I see that it is not conducive to stay open 24 hours, I can certainly limit those hours.
Well, see, I just don't, I mean, my concern is the next door neighbor, somebody brings your motor home back, it's broke down, they're out there working on it at 2 o'clock in the morning, lights on. I mean, I could just see where could be a problem, potential problem, and I guess it depends on who runs the facility, but like the one before, I mean, I just think some consistency, whether it starts now or started 10 years ago, but some consistency going forward, just like with the solar farms, just like with the cell towers. I mean, that, you know, raise your hand if you want to live next to a place somebody's over there working on their motorhome at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Once again, what's the residency look around the location at this point? Because naturally it's first come, first served. So there's not any houses around there. And you put this 24 hours and someone chooses to build or buy a house there, they're making that choice as of what's already there.
Like Braston said, there is not dense housing around. There is housing. There's a lot immediately adjacent to the property towards the Benson side, and a couple across Church Road from the property. But I would not, Mr. Wood, allow anybody to be working on their vehicles, trailers, whatever it would be. That's going to be in my lease. That's going to be in the agreement they sign before they occupy space in that facility. I'm going to prohibit anything being broken down or being able to be worked on. Certainly the surrounding residents and businesses are a priority for me, and I'm not going into this blindly, just turning a blind eye to them. So I do want to do the right thing, but I also need to allow access people to their property 24/7, as anyone would be allowed.
Yes, sir, I understand that, and I appreciate that, but things like this get sold, and the zoning goes with the property. And I mean, this is somewhat of a negotiation, I understand, and I mean, I seem to be the only one has a problem with it, so.
Well, it's been thought about on my end as far as disturbing the homeowners that are there. So I'm surely taking every step I can and taking that into consideration.
I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
So I do, along those same lines, now that the question has been raised, I mean, it looks like the main egress is right across the street from a residential unit. So there is the potential for lights to be in there. And again, the engineer in me likes consistency, and I know the other one's 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. that we had restrictions. And I guess since this is our first process, if maybe a question for our council or Braston, is what happens if we put a restriction on it? Can they come back and ask for, what is the process for asking that to be modified?
So this, once again, this is a process by which statute states that there must be consent to the conditions by the property owner, by the applicant. It is totally this board's purview to request and suggest additional conditions to mitigate any conditions that you may feel be of a negative or detrimental impact to the area or to that neighborhood. You're under no obligation to accept blindly and to approve in the same manner. It's completely this board's purview.
So Mr. Rowland had mentioned no maintenance. I'm assuming that is put words in the mouth, but no maintenance on site. Is that a condition that we could put in here? There'll be no maintenance on the site, and then that way we don't have to worry about
noise restrictions after 10 p.m.?
Well, you know, I think we talked about this, and I think the applicant has said that he's going to use a good neighbor policy, and certainly if he gets complaints. And I understand both of you's concern, and I don't necessarily disagree, but each one of them stands on their own in regard to conditions as which they're entitled to enter in. And so that's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Browse, where we're dealing with two different cases, even though it's the same subject. Now, the case we heard before, there was neighbors that came out and said, hey, look, he worked with the person putting the property there and said, we'd like for you to consider this. That guy said, I hear you, I'm going to consider this. I don't know, I don't hear anybody here saying there weren't any conditions put on this or that it's bothering them, and they're two separate cases for that matter.
Also, the nature of this type of business, if you're storing your boat or your RV, you know, people want to have access. If they've got an early fishing trip tomorrow morning, they want to be able to get their stuff. In the previous case, it was a mini storage building. I don't think anybody needs access to their grandmother's bedroom suit at 3 a.m., you know, but if you've got a fishing trip you're going on, you want to go there and hook up your boat and take off with it. So it's a different type of business, although they're both storage, but they're storing very different components.
Mr. Chairman, no, I'm not going to speak to this case. So whatever I say, it's just we're in the new process. This board can put whatever, can ask the applicant to abide by whatever condition we want to. For instance, if Mr. Wood wants to say that they can't work on, wants to put a condition, they can't work on it after 6 o'clock at night, between 6 o'clock at night and 6 o'clock in the morning, and the board goes along with that, we're entitled to do that.
Right, but this is, he's clearly stated. Okay, but I'm simply saying he's probably waiting for us to vote on this because it might not matter what 2 or 3 commissioners want. If the rest of the commissioners are ready to prove it as is, then it's a done deal. Okay.
I'm just trying to make sure we understand the process,
right.
Chad, that we have the right as commissioners, we're legislating, we're making law, and we can put whatever conditions or whatever law we want on the approval. I just want to make sure we understand that. As to whether it applies to this case or not, that's not what I'm trying to do. I just want to clarify what we have the right to do.
But that's what the majority of this board can do, not one individual, 2. Yeah,
That's right. Council, when do we find out which way this board concurs?
Well, certainly, that's all part of the deliberation process.
We got to finish the whole process here.
And whatnot. And Commissioner Smith is right with regards to the consideration of conditions and that sort of thing. Now, of course, the applicant has to agree in writing to those conditions. If the applicant in this negotiation process, and I'm not talking about this case, I'm talking about cases in general, if the applicant does not agree with that, as the legislative body, you could choose to not approve the rezoning request. And so that, because you have broad discretion in the consideration of these particular cases. So
I guess Mr. Wood is asking, at what point in this process do we add conditions, even though all board members might not be favorable to doing anything but what we have in front of us?
Chad, let me
make a motion.
Let me try to help that.
Yeah.
If Larry wanted to make a condition, he would make that in the form of a motion. And then we would either, if it gets a second, we would approve that as a condition. Then if we approve that, then the board has approved that as a condition. Then the applicant can say he either agrees with it or doesn't agree with it. If he agrees with it, then we pass it. If he doesn't agree with it, then the board has to vote again on whether they want to approve the whole application.
Is this the point in this, Counselor, that Mr. Wood would make that motion?
I so move we add stipulation condition number 4 and make the operating hours from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. on case 2109.
And no working on site?
I don't care if they work on site from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. I just don't want any.
We got a motion on the floor. I'm asking again, we got a motion on the floor. I'm going to ask one more time. There's a motion on the floor. It dies from a lack of a second. Okay.
Thank you.
So any other questions for the applicant?
So I want to go back to I heard the applicant say that contractually the people that rent from him are not going to be able to do maintenance on site.
Yes, sir, that's correct, Commissioner Lauder. I'm not in my agreement with my tenants of the facility it's clearly going to say that everything contained there in that property will need to be in running order, good order, and only accessible, well, it can be accessible 24/7 now, but I'm certainly not going to allow it to be a mechanic shop or a place where you go on the weekends to work on your broken down boat. That's not the intent of this site. This site is to store running, functional trailers, boats, RVs, etc.
Now, we all got enough sense to know that batteries go dead on boats. I mean, we got to be reasonable with this. Yeah, tires go flat.
That has no binding effect. No future binding effect. He can make, that is a private agreement between him and a person. That would have no binding effect on the next person or the next person. We have to pass the law as though that would bind everybody. I'm not saying that he doesn't mean what he says. That's good, but it will not bind the next person.
Right, so let's kind of continue that. If the applicant is already saying that maintenance is not going to be performed, and we have some concern about people coming in and doing maintenance and worried about what the neighbors are going to think, then we should add that condition.
You should do just what Mr. Wood said.
You should have seconded the motion.
No, I'm going to limit the hours. They can come and pick it up.
Have you got a motion you want to offer?
Yes, I'm getting there.
Okay.
If I can finish.
Okay.
Can I?
Are you doing it in the form of a motion?
Can I rudely interrupt before you make the motion?
Go ahead and rudely interrupt.
I told you guys, people watching at home, this would get difficult.
This is new.
So what's fixing to happen here now is the applicant is possibly going to be set up to be in violation if you make the motion that there's no maintenance to be done on vehicles, which he's clearly said that was going to be in his lease. So you're just agreeing with him and nailing it down to be a condition. The next time somebody's boat tire battery gets messed up and one of our enforcement officers go by there and there's a service truck out there working on a boat, you have set him up to be in violation.
Yeah.
Whereas all I did was try to limit the hours.
I own a storage facility. Stuff happens.
I've somewhat eliminated the possibility of people being disturbed at night. And now we're fixing to cross the line here on.
Well, let him put his motion out there, Commissioner.
We haven't closed the hearing yet. It ain't time for a motion.
Okay. Well, no, you can. No, according to the new process, you can make motions before the hearing closes out based on. Yeah.
I done made a motion.
Well, so it didn't get a second. So you got a motion.
No, I like to finish my conversation before I start making a motion. So,
okay.
So if the applicant is agreeable that he's not going to have on-site maintenance, the concern is we're going to have people showing up doing maintenance, and I think, and I know before we had a definition of what maintenance was. There was light maintenance, and such as replacing tires, batteries, that kind of thing. If somebody, I don't think he wants any out there with hydraulic fluid, oils, and changing stuff and get it on his ground is probably his concern. So my thought is, if there's no maintenance out there, we don't have to worry about somebody showing up at 3 o'clock and doing the things. They come up, get their boat, and go. Or if they got to change a tire, I don't think that's going to be making a lot of noise. But my thought and my motion is to add a condition that prohibits on-site maintenance. And I don't
major maintenance.
Major maintenance, if that's the correct term.
How do you determine what major?
Well, slow down. We'll discuss that in the discussion phase if it even gets to that point. We have got a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Do we have a second? Do we have a second? Motion fails for lack of second. Okay. Now, if there's no other questions for the applicant, any questions? Donnie, you got something for us?
I got one other thing that I would like, since we're in discussion and negotiation, I'd like to present something or request in addition to these conditions.
You sure?
Okay. I don't know. I'm learning a lot right now.
It's 0 for 2 right now, sir. So you want
Be careful. We're going to let that side make the next motion.
I'll tell you what I got and get going, but go ahead.
Okay, so what I want to go to is condition number 13. Talks about an 8-foot opaque fence installed around the storage.
And you want 13 foot?
No. We know that by code we've got to provide an 8-foot fence, a security fence. The code doesn't get specific to it. It does talk about it being, it does say opaque or proper screening. In the planning board meeting, we discussed this. We ended up with having an opportunity for the owner to study whether he would use slats or fabric on his fence, the chain link fencing that was going around there. We do know that we are also doing a landscape buffer according to what you see in front of you, 20 foot and 10 foot, depending on where it's located. What I'd like to have 13 amended to be is a second option to the opaque fencing. We would like to be able to, maybe not the entire thing, but maybe a combination of these, but like to add in a 4-foot berm with landscape, bringing the landscaping on top, and it be of the evergreen hedge variety. And we work with the landscape architect to get that and get that to where staff would agree to it. But we'd like to have that, again, not to isolate just to the fencing nor just to the landscape, the berm with the landscape, but a potential combination of the two as we continue to work through the fine details of the site plan through staff level.
Lord, I hate to ask another question, but so is that something that we condition with staff approval of an alternate?
I think a motion has to be made right here.
Well, I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, so obviously, you can approve the condition, or you can, however you want to choose, the 4-foot berm with an evergreen. I would be careful with just a blanket evergreen, because the evergreen shrub, you have dwarf varieties. So we need to put some type of at maturity or some variety at least that is going to satisfy the intent of that opaque fence. If it's, because an evergreen shrub goes into, they grow in all different sizes, all different shapes. So I would be specific at this point, such as a Nellie Stevens holly or something.
Well, appreciate that. That answers your question, Mr. Lawler.
Not really, but I think I don't think this board is qualified to decide what's an acceptable. I think that's the staff decision.
Well,
I don't want to say what kind of plan.
And I go back to my dad when he was on this board. He would say, these people come and want to put a business in, and the county puts up so many shrubs and fences to hide the man's business. So who in the world wants to start a business and we put enough mess up where the public can't even see what the business is or be able to shop with the business? So it don't make I know we're protected from the public, but still, it's a business.
Where's the opaque fencing?
Which?
Turn a couple pages back.
Oh, maybe I'm looking at the wrong list.
Why would any of us want to hide where we're making our money?
Page 20 of 61.
Okay. Yeah. What I was looking at only had 12.
So what you're asking is for a combination of opaque fence, berm, and plank fence.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The berm and the plants would go together, and to answer the type, we would follow the land development code. It calls out how the buffers are, what the plantings can be, and there's a full list of allowed plantings, and so we would meet those requirements.
I think this is a part of the negotiation part of it, and so, right.
You got a motion?
Motions ain't gone well.
I think I'm out on this. On odd number cases.
But I'm going to try, because I don't
say, try your luck, let's see what it is.
I don't mind trying my luck, so.
What we talking about?
Berm and the planting instead of the fence?
Along with.
Yeah, combination.
Or combination.
That doesn't make sense.
Let me clarify just a little bit. So no matter what, no matter the screening part, we're still going to have an 8-foot fence. It could be, what I'm asking for is the option for that fence to be all chain link in places, supplemented with a berm and evergreen landscaping over it. Other places it may be the opaque, the 8-foot fence with opaque, it could be fabric or slats.
I mean, there's no question the fence, it has to be a fence around the area because he's storing people's stuff. So there's no question there. I guess what he's saying is when he's going ahead and have to put a link fence up, why, and don't that make it necessarily make it be an opaque? As long as he protects from, with vegetation or screening or whatnot, with the fence he's already going to put up to protect people's properties. Right.
So let me see if I can lend a little clarity. If it's desirable to this body, you could simply amend or propose an amendment to the conditions such that in the areas identified, and I would prefer they be identified this evening, not necessarily be left to the discretion of staff, that a 4-foot berm with an adequate planting of evergreen material to satisfy the intent of the opaque requirement for fencing be added to the conditions. We're okay with that.
That sounds good.
We do have in our design
Is that the form
manual,
of a
we do
motion?
have a list of suggested plant materials, and it would cover any type of screening or to include these
So
evergreen
this board
plant
could say
materials.
your suggestion on plant material, staff's suggestion on plant
At
material.
staff's approval.
Is there a class
discretion.
that's equal to the OPEC fencing?
So we have, yes, so we have we have 3 classes, currently 3 classes of buffers. You have an A, a B, and a C. And A is the more dense, but it's the least in width. It's the most narrow. It's only 10 feet wide. The B is 15. It's a little bit, the density is less, but it is wider, so you get a different effect and a different impact. And then Class C is our largest, which is a 20-foot wide buffer.
All right, let's move on here. Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to amend condition number 13 per what Braxton said, as it's recorded in the minutes, recorded by the clerk, that we give the modification to condition number 13. Can you, Madam Clerk, can you read back that? Do you have it significant?
So amendment to the conditions, that a 4-foot berm with adequate planting of evergreen material to satisfy the intent of the OPEC requirements for fencing. Is that correct, Braxton?
That's correct.
Suggested by staff. Did you not say?
Or approved or at staff discretion.
Okay.
Okay, that's the motion. Let's see if we get a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Because I got some
Oh, it's your lucky night,
I got some
Mr. Browse.
questions.
You're the only one that's passed so far.
Donnie, let me ask you a question now. There's going to be a fence. This doesn't change the fence.
That's correct.
It just changes what you can see through the fence. Instead of an OPEC material, you want to put a berm and bushes. All that is about sight. It has nothing to do with the fence.
Okay.
So,
We've got a motion and we've got a second, so now we enter discussion,
okay,
yes.
so I think I heard our planning director say he would like to have that shown where it was going to be rather than him have discretion. So how do we make that happen with Donnie standing up with a pen and?
Did I understand him say as an alternative, you wasn't real sure you were going to do that?
Yes, sir.
Isn't that what I understood?
Yes, sir.
You weren't really sure where you're going to do that or not?
As an alternative, subject to staff approval.
Yeah, staff approval.
I'm just saying staff said that's not what they wanted. They didn't want to approve it.
Once again, we work at the pleasure of this body, so.
Okay, well then we'll leave it like that then. I think the
All
staff
right,
approved.
we got a motion, we got a second, so any more discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I've got a question. It was 100 years ago, but I went to school in engineering, and I understand drawings, but I want to understand this drawing.
Yes, sir.
You've got spaces here at the end, then says not a space. What's it going to look like out there on the ground? I mean, what's the difference between a space in this area that's not a space? Does that make sense? I mean, you're not going to have above-ground structures, are you?
No, sir, no above-ground structure, so it's for layout purposes more than anything. That's so we can allocate what he's got, what he can rent out. More than likely, it's still going to be an area that's covered in stone.
How would I know where my space is versus Butch's next door?
Yeah, that's something that we'll have to work out through the construction process. I'm sure it will be identified maybe with parking bumpers on the beginnings.
Okay, I got you.
Mr. Chairman, I call for question.
All right, it's been called for question.
That's right. I've just got a question, but it can come after the vote because it has nothing to do with this case. It's just a procedural on how we're doing this.
Okay, we got a motion, got a second. We've been called to question. We're closing discussion. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Aye. Okay, Madam Clerk, did you get that?
Just upset.
All right, Mr. Harris, did you have a
Yeah, I
question?
just have a question on like the conditions, to modify the condition. Could that have been done as adopt the state consistency resolution and presented in the agenda packet with the conditions as stated with the modification of condition number 13? Could that all have been done in one thing instead of, because we're trying to make a motion in a second on every single condition. couldn't you just lump it, can you just lump it all together and do it that way, or you gotta vote on each one of them?
You most certainly could do it that way.
Okay.
There will be times where there may be multiple amendments, a myriad. Once again, it depends on the complexity of the request, the complexity of the site development. So in that situation, you may be better off to address each one of those.
Okay.
Obtain consensus from, or at least some kind of verbal agreement or agreement in principle from the applicant, and then address that with any motion at statement of consistency. Okay. Yes, sir.
So now do we need to formally make a motion to adopt it with?
No, I've got to move on with the meeting.
We need to open it up to the floor to
I've got
additional
to close the public discussion. I've got to talk to the applicant again, make sure we agree, so we got to finish our normal procedure.
No.
All we did was make a motion to an amendment.
Change
Yeah.
In the legislative process.
Not if all of us didn't agree on it.
Yeah.
We all might have different amendments that we agree to and don't agree to as a full board. Yeah. It's a new process, Ted. We're all trying to get used to it.
Yeah.
All right, let's get on with the meeting. Okay, I'm going to close the public discussion portion of the hearing and call for Braston to summarize and present planning board's recommendation.
Planning board recommendation as it pertains to conditional zoning case 21-09 is recommend approval with a statement of consistency for your consideration, and with the added conditions.
Any questions for Braston? Okay, if the applicant would please come forward. Do you agree with the final conditions proposed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Board, are you your consideration of the conditions and satisfied with what we've done? All right, I'm on to close the hearing. Planning board recommends approval. The commission concur. We need a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt this statement of consistency resolution as presented in the agenda packet and approve the rezoning request with the conditions as amended on number 13, as discussed for case number 21-09.
Second.
Got a motion, got a second. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, you got that? Okay, before we open the next rezoning here, and I knew we wouldn't get through tonight with a new procedure process without confusion, so I hope the public is bearing with us and know we are making light hard of it, but we do take it serious and we do want to get it right for the public and for the people and the applicants. And Mr. Smith, thank you for your guidance in the beginning on exactly how to get through this legislative process, which is new to us, but we hopefully got through the worst of it.
I just told Commissioner Harris, each change in the bill, so to speak, you got to vote on that.
I thought so.
And then once you get it all packaged together, you vote on the whole thing.
That's right. That's what I thought. Well, I didn't in the beginning, but I learned it. All right, case 2113, I'm going to open the rezoning hearing. I'm going to call on Braston for case background and discussion.
Yes, sir. Rezoning case 21-13 involves a petition to rezone 8,500 acre tract located at 4624 US 70 Business Highway West in Wilson's Mills Township from general business to agricultural residential. Owner and applicant is Javier Contreras. Utilities and services are provided by Wilson's Mills Fire District and Rescue. The existing land uses, actually there's a residential structure there. There is not a business currently operated from the site. Surrounding land uses are agricultural and residential, mainly woodland, some cropland. In addition to, there is a church immediately to the east of the property and a manufactured home park just beyond that. Traffic counts on US 70 business in this vicinity is 14,500 vehicles per day, and that's a 2019 count. And 70 business does appear on transportation plan as an existing boulevard with adequate design capacity. The land use plan designates this area as a primary growth area. Staff does recommend approval, and once again, this is a downzoning of the property from the general business to AR.
Any questions for Braston? If not, we'll hear from the applicant. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Javier. Coming with my address is 4624 US Highway 70, Clayton, and I would like to request to have a residential to purchase the house. We know that people was living there before. Used to work with my wife and St. Mark. They sell plants, and we just trying to, when we purchased the house, we know that was considered a commercial, but it used to be residential, so.
You just want to live there now?
We just wanna.
Or have it a home?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? If none, or is there anybody in the public that would like to speak for or against this case? If not, I'm going to close the public. Yep.
I have a question. Is this out there beside of Interstate Ministries? Is that the name of the church?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good.
Any more questions, comments? If not, I'm going to close the public discussion portion of the hearing and call for Braston to summarize and present planning board's recommendation.
As it relates to rezoning case 21-13, planning board does recommend approval and provides for your consideration a statement of consistency.
Any questions, discussion, anything for Braston or this board as it pertains to this in the public hearing? In the public discussion portion of the hearing? If not, thank you, Braston. I'm going to close the hearing. Case 3113, planning board recommends approval. If the commissioners concur, we need a motion.
Chairman, I move to adopt statement of consistency resolution as presented in the agenda packet and approve the rezoning request for 2113.
I second it.
We've got a motion, got a second. Any more discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Case 2115 was tabled into the December 6, 2021, 6 p.m. meeting. We're moving along to case 2116. I'm going to open the rezoning hearing, call on Braston for discussion and case background.
Yes, sir. Case 21-16 involves a petition to rezone 24.46 acres of a 28.2 acre tract located in the 500 block of Wise Road in Clayton Township from general business to and agricultural residential to industrial 1, our light industry classification. The owner is Donald H. Williamson and Edna Atkinson Williamson. Applicant is Runway Logistics LLC. Utilities and services provided by Wilson's Mills Fire District, Clayton Rescue. The surrounding properties are zoned AR, used for agricultural residential purposes, and community business, and is currently vacant. Also, I-1 and used for an industrial business, and there are several surrounding properties that are in town of Clayton's ETJ various zoning designations. Traffic count for this portion of Wise Road is not available, and Wise Road does not appear on our CTP as needing improvement. The area of the property is located in a primary growth area towards a comprehensive land use plan. Staff does recommend approval, as there have been a number of, and we have seen a couple of rezonings on Wise Road and in this area over the past 24 months.
Any questions for Braston?
Development over there might assist Mr. Taylor in keeping the trash out of the end of that road.
There you go. If not, we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening.
State your name and address for the record.
Yes, sir. I'm Alex Finley with Finley Commercial Realty. Our office is at 6512 Six Forks Road in Raleigh, and I represent the buyer, potential buyer in this transaction. We're hoping to get the rezoning for a truck terminal as well as a storage facility for my clients.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
When you said storage facility to find that?
A warehouse, sir.
Pardon me?
A warehouse, sir.
Okay. You know, we had some storage.
Yes, sir, fair enough.
I didn't want to fight that battle again, you know.
Okay, any more questions or comments for the applicant?
So it is both pieces of that parcel? I know there's one on each side of 7070 Business intersection.
No, sir, just the east part, the larger one.
Okay.
Any more questions for the applicant? If not, thank you. Anybody else in the audience wants to state for or against this case, 2116? If not, I will close the public discussion portion of the hearing and call for Braston to summarize and present planning board's recommendation.
Sir, with regard to rezoning case 21-16, planning board does recommend approval, offers for your consideration statement of consistency.
Any questions or comments for Braston?
Mr. Chairman, I do. About the process. Now, this is not conditional zoning.
No, sir.
Straight rezoning.
Straight rezoning. It's a general use district, yes, sir.
So they've got a lot of latitude on what they put out there.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Very much like there's several other properties, and there's been two separate rezoning requests in that area in the last, I'm going to put it out at 24 months. It's been less than that, and both of those have been approved. So yes, sir.
Any more questions? If not, I'm going to close the hearing. Planning board recommends approval. If the commissioners concur, we need a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt the statement of consistency resolution as presented in the agenda packet for case 2116 and approve the rezoning request.
We got a motion?
A second.
We got a motion, we got a second. Is there any more discussion? All in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next on our agenda is Johnston County Public School funding. We took care of that at the beginning of the meeting. Next, we have plan activity report from Braston.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Finley. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Just wanted to report for you that know everyone's interested in our comprehensive land use plan, how that process is going. We will be having our first public forum, which will be a drop-in style forum. So it's a little different than a group of a group convening and hearing from the consultant or steering committee or anyone speak. It's more interactive. So we will have this drop-in session will occur at the Johnston County Ag Center on October 21st, and times are in flux right now, but we're thinking 4 p.m. at least from 4 p.m. till 7 p.m. We may go a little bit later just to make sure we capture those who are working. We want to give everyone the opportunity. So we'll have stations set up in the room, and you'll start it. There'll be an introductory station where there will be a video playing, which kind of introduces the process and what's going on and gives you some background data and information. And then they'll move to different stations within there that'll be manned by the consulting team and any other, and potentially even some steering committee members to assist, so that we can gain as much feedback from the public as possible about this plan. And once again, this is on October 21st, and at first glance, it looks like 4 to 7. We may be extending that from 4 to 8, but we will start putting that out tomorrow via social media and our print and local media as well. Be glad to answer any questions you may have to that regard.
I have a question. Maybe I'm missing in action, but and maybe the other commissioners know stuff I don't know. But I got no clue as to what's going on. I don't know. I don't know what the plan is. Don't know which way it's going. I don't know anything about it. And it just appears to me we're headed down to what I was afraid of at the end. They're just going to drop a plan down in front of us. Then we're going to have to deal with it at the end, rather than being briefed all along about what's being considered and having some input.
Yes, sir. So the plan is once we get the public feedback, is then we'll bring that information to both the Planning Board and Board of County Commissioners to see that. What this process is feedback on the goals that have been established and deliberated by the steering committee.
Suppose we have some feedback.
Yes, sir. We'll entertain that. If you do have feedback, once again, we'll.
How can I have feedback when I don't know what's being considered unless I go to that meeting, which I really don't want to go to?
Once that's done, you'll have the opportunity for feedback after that. We'll bring it to this body.
We're still in the information collection phase.
Essentially, yes. So there'll be proposed goals. They're not the fixed goals. That's for this body to determine. And we'll bring that back to this body after that public forum.
So are you saying the steering committee has already established goals, or are they still reviewing the old goals and deciding if they're suitable for going forward?
So the way we approached it is we presented them with the former goals of the plan instead of starting from scratch. We give them the opportunity to weed those out, if you want to say, or cull those out. So they had the opportunity to either keep, modify, or remove and add any goals they felt necessary. And to this point, yes, sir, that has been completed.
I don't even know what goals you're talking about.
So it's the goals of the land use plan. There were specific goals that are currently in our plan that were established in 2009 when that plan was adopted. And that's what the steering committee has evaluated.
And you said October 21st?
Yes, sir.
At
the Ag Center.
From 5 to 8?
It'll be from 4, we know from 4 to 7. We may extend that from 4 to 8.
4 to 7?
Yes, sir.
Any more questions, comments as it pertains to, I'm sure they are, Mr. Smith, but I'm sure staff will be glad to work with anyone individually on what we're looking for, whatnot, and then next meeting, bring it back to the board and discuss it.
And we can certainly bring it, I know we have, this body has a meeting that Monday before. We can certainly bring back the draft goals.
There you go.
At that time, prior to public comment. Yes, sir.
I think that'd be good.
Absolutely.
Okay. Next on, thank you, Brass.
You're welcome.
Next on the agenda is manager reports and comments.
I don't have any.
Board reports and comments.
I do, Mr. Chairman. You know, and we certainly want to encourage our citizens to give us good feedback and public comment, and we avoid becoming argumentative. But it really, well, I think it needs to be stated, since we've been called willfully ignorant and racist and that sort of thing, and I would just like to set the record straight. I think we all agree. We want to see history taught, true, honest history. What happened, teach it. And we should not feel guilty. Our kids and grandkids shouldn't feel guilty when we teach history. And if they do, then I agree, we're not teaching it right. You know, they shouldn't be made to feel guilty for what happened 150 years ago, 200 years ago. It's
Don't
history
repeat
and
the
it
same
happened.
mistakes twice.
And they need to know about it, but they don't need to feel guilty about it. And that's what concerns me about some of the things we heard from teachers in here tonight. And it concerns me. I hate for them people to teach my kid to feel guilty about something that happened 8 generations ago.
Well, hopefully we're headed in the right direction. I'm glad we have that behind us. Appreciate all the work that everybody did. I know, as with a lot of things we do, it was mentioned many times that a small majority wanted this policy and funding. The silent majority thought it was ridiculous, and they were bringing this to our attention time and time again. Well, us as elected officials are in the public from different areas of Johnston County, and it's our job to listen to the public, and when it's time to vote, to determine what we hear, and let us determine where the strong and the weak are on different subjects. And at the end of the day, do what we feel is the right thing to be done.
Mr. Chairman, I want to set the record straight. When I brought up withholding funds for what I believe to be a good purpose for this country, there was no small majority. No one was talking about that. And this board was not influenced by anyone other than what we decided to do. We took the leadership on that issue. We weren't following anyone. And to be accused of following a small majority is just a lie, and it's false.
I agree. And as you very well know, we're not on anything going to please everybody all the time. And so that's just the nature of our business. Now, to mention your public comment, there's been a lot of thought put in that, especially as me being chairman. We had a lot of conversation with staff this afternoon. And one thing that I know for certain, this board is not going to silence the people. And we have had the conversation that, yes, without the use of vulgar language and abusive language, they can come to that podium and basically call us anything they want to call, and they have that right. And we have a right to question. They don't necessarily have to answer or respond. That's up to them. But if a board member wants to respond, that's totally up to a board member. But at the end of the day, we do not want our constituents coming and telling us what we want to hear and not listen to the ones that are telling us what we don't. It is open for everybody. We've just got to be mindful of the time frame and not getting repetitive on the same subject, and that's something that I will work on. But it's a difficult line to be able to draw the line when someone's trying to express yourself. But I think everything went fair tonight. Thank this board for all we've gone through. I think we've handled it like gentlemen. I think we've handled it like good elected representatives of the people, even though not everybody sees it the same way and they're not on every issue. But I appreciate it.
Good job, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, so move we adjourn.
Got a motion, got a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned.